Hey everyone, it's been a minute since I made a video. Got my hair chopped off. As you can tell from the title of the video, I've now had my RED Komodo for just over 2 years. This isn't going to be a review. I'm not going to get into the technical details of this camera. There are plenty of those videos out there. I just want to speak to what this camera has and hasn't done for me. First, I'm going to start with what the Komodo has done for me. It boosted my confidence in my filmmaking ability, um, in my confidence in myself as a DP, as a director. Before, my experience was limited to Pocket 6Ks, Canon DSLRs. I have a Fuji X-T2. So this was a real step into the cinema camera world for me. Not to say that the Pocket 6K isn't that, but you know what I'm getting at. It's seen as a lower budget camera. So I think just being able to say that I own this camera, um, it did something for me, like emotionally, mentally. And the second way it gave me confidence was confidence in my gear. This camera is just quality in both the image that it's able to produce and the build quality of the camera itself. I know it's not gonna break. This thing is solid. It's rugged. It can get beat up. Um, I mean, it's proven the test of time, and I've brought it around, thrown it in bags, and used it on many shoots. So I know that this thing is not gonna break on me. It's also given me a confidence in the footage because of its flexibility. I know that if I don't nail everything 100% perfectly, I have plenty of room to fix my mistakes, whether that's mistakes in exposure or white balance, whatever it is. I can really shift and pull the images that come out of this thing. The rigging flexibility of it, I can turn it into a small little box camera. I can rig it out to a full cinema camera build if I need to. Throw it on a shoulder mount. Have it small enough to fit in my backpack. There's so many options with the size of the camera and what you're able to do with that cube form factor. I know some people hate on it, some people love it. I personally love it. The other thing I love about working with the Komodo are the exposure tools that are built into it. The traffic lights have been a game changer for me. I think, one, they've helped me to understand how to expose a digital negative properly, and then they just speed up the whole workflow, especially in a documentary setting where I don't have time to, like break out the false color and really analyze the image and see where everything's landing. I'm able to just glance down at the traffic lights real quick and be like, oh, I'm way underexposed. I need to let more light in, or oh, I'm overexposed. I need to pull it down. I mean, it's super intuitive and fast, which works really well for a lot of the types of shoots that I work on. So just as a direct result of owning this camera, I've learned a lot about the craft of image making, both technically and artistically. How to use ISO properly. I mean, that's something I didn't know until I had this camera, and that's not necessarily a direct result of the camera itself, but more so owning this camera led me into the RED education videos that they have, and that taught me a ton about how to expose properly with digital sensors. The other thing that this camera has given me is a much deeper understanding of the color grading process. To use this camera to its fullest potential, I've really had to dive into how to use proper color managed pipelines. Even just looking at my work from a year and a half, 2 years ago to now, just with my color grading capabilities and knowledge, that kind of stemmed from owning this camera, it's funny because you look back on that old work and you kind of hate it. You kind of hate the way it looks because you're like, oh, if only I'd known that now, I could have made it look that 10 or 20% better. But that's just the process of learning a craft like this. But um, I'm just grateful for where it's led me in my progression of the craft and in my ability to make good looking images. This is kind of going back a little bit to what I was saying earlier, but it gave me a confidence to share my work. And then I put that work out there, which then generated more work for me just through the process of putting it out there, people seeing it, and then wanting to get me involved on projects with them. So that's been really awesome. Let's get into what the Komodo didn't do for me. This camera did not get me the work that I thought it was going to. In my mind, I had this idea that I would buy the RED Komodo and then people would come out of nowhere. Oh, can you work on this project? You have that awesome camera. I want to get you on here and shoot with the Komodo. I want the Komodo on my project. That didn't happen. I guess that wasn't a realistic expectation on my end. And maybe it was just ignorance of how the industry works. I mean, this was 2 years ago. I hadn't gone freelance yet. I knew I wanted to start building up my career and thought that this camera would be a great first step in doing that. And in some ways it helped, but in terms of actually bringing me more work, the Komodo did not do that. There has only been 2 instances that I can think of where the Komodo, I wouldn't even say got me the job because people didn't come to me because of the Komodo. It was more so they were excited to use the Komodo after a conversation had already been initiated. And then other than that, people don't even really know or care what this camera is. They just want good looking videos. So maybe part of that's just the circle of work I'm in now, the people I work with. But I had this expectation of I'm gonna start posting stuff with this camera, and then people are gonna start coming to me asking me for work because I have this camera, and that just didn't happen. I'd say the way that it got me work is that I made high quality videos with it that then got me work. So I got work because of the videos I made with it, not because of the camera itself. And it's funny because, I've been watching filmmaking YouTube videos for the last 7 years, maybe. And I've heard people say that same thing where it's like, I thought this camera was going to get me work and it didn't. But it's one of those things that you don't really want to listen to. And you just kind of have to learn from your mistakes and experiences. Not to say that buying this camera was a mistake. It has definitely been one of the best investments I've ever made. But you have to have realistic expectations and an understanding of the industry before you buy gear like this. Because if you're sinking a ton of money into it, thinking it's going to bring all this work in that's going to help pay your bills, probably won't. It may. That just wasn't my experience. So my 2 main frustrations with this camera are the boot up time and the lack of internal NDs. So the boot up time is about 23, 24 seconds. That's only really an issue when I'm doing more of the documentary style projects. It can be frustrating. You see a moment about to happen, you go to turn on your camera, and then you're sitting there for almost half a minute, hoping that this moment is not going to dissipate and just induces a lot of unnecessary anxiety because of how long the boot up time is, specifically in those situations. If you're on set, the boot up time isn't that big a deal. But when you're doing more run and gun style projects, it can be a real hindrance. And so I end up leaving my camera on for hours and hours at a time just so I don't have to deal with turning it on and off. So V-mount batteries, you basically have to have a V-mount battery system for this camera. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't want that, but it's a must. And the lack of NDs built into the camera, I mean, that's just a frustration because now you have to put something on front of the lens. And especially with my Zeiss Super Speeds, those don't have filter threads. So I have to now rig up something that's going to be a lot larger with a matte box on the front. And, I wish it had internal NDs, and RED made a module for that, but I'm not going to pay that much money for it because it is ridiculously expensive. And then there are some third-party options, but like some are PL, and they're super hard to get right now because of like manufacturing issues, I guess. And then there's EF ones, but I don't really use too many EF lenses anymore. So the options that I have are just not great. So I wish there was a better ND solution, or at least a cheaper one, but there isn't. So now we'll just get into my current setup, the way I rig this camera out. I have this camera in a 8-sin cage, and I have it on an 8-sin base plate with small rig aluminum rods running through it. I also have an 8-sin top handle. I use the wooden camera V-mount sled on the back with the expander module to be able to use one of the BP batteries on the back, which allows me to then hot swap the V-mount batteries out without having to shut the camera off. And a Simod lens PL mount. And then for my Minolta mount, I just use Earth. I think it used to be Gobe or Gobi, and then they had to rebrand. Oh crap. I just realized I turned this camera before finishing the video, so I don't even remember what the right frame is. I can come back a little bit more this way. So yeah, that's my experience with the RED Komodo. Overall, I love this camera and don't regret the purchase at all. This was kind of like a ramble. If there's anything I didn't cover or any questions you have about this camera, please feel free to leave comments, and I'd love to answer your questions that you have about it. So yeah, that's it in this video. Hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.